News coming down that the Bengals are trading for Joe Flacco. Again, Bengals trading for Joe Flacco, according to Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. Wow. No idea the return. Wow. Really?
Oh, my God.
Do you think Flacco walked in and asked for a trade? I would have.
Great league. It's a great league.
I will say this. Can we give Jeff credit? Jeff said before we walked in the door something gigantic would happen today.
You sniffed this out like a champ.
Thank you.
And we thought you had gas. Nope.
Thank you very much.
You were onto something.
Thought it was gas. I told these guys, I have a feeling something big is going to happen during our show, either a firing or a trade.
What are we getting? Did you say what we're getting?
It doesn't
Do we
matter.
know? I'm just curious.
You know what it'll be, Andy? It'll be you'll get a 6th round pick and you'll trade a 7th and Joe Flacco.
A $25 gift card to Skyline Chili.
And they traded within the division.
The Browns must not think Joe has much left if you're going to trade him in division.
Well, so let's break this down. Obviously, Flacco did what they needed him to do. Start the first couple games of the season, and then they didn't get the results they wanted, so then they had the opportunity to move Gabriel up and make him the starter. We saw that on Sunday. So he went from starter to demoted to number 2 to traded the following Monday. Joe Flacco, again, according to Tom Pelissero, and who was the second person?
Ian
Rappaport, has been traded to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Now multiple reports. Adam Schefter chiming in, saying Joe Flacco and a 6th round pick to the Bengals for a 5th round pick.
So what I laid out just one round earlier for both. Okay, so here's the deal. Dylan Gabriel.
Right?
Bailey Zappi.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing.
Shedeur Sanders. Not necessarily in that order.
Shedeur Sanders up, right?
Not necessarily.
Sanders, if you drafted him, you might as well make him the number 2 quarterback at the worst. Why
Andy,
wouldn't you?
Because of this. I don't know that this is the case. Why wouldn't you?
Yes.
You don't think he's ready to play at the NFL level.
Then why did you draft him?
Well, Andy, a lot of guys you draft late aren't ready to play at the NFL level. That's okay. Can everybody realize that it's okay? Let the kid develop a little.
Flacco for the Cincinnati Bengals, not a name that we discussed in division trade, a trade with the Browns, the first that we've heard of a trade attempted with the Cleveland Browns since Sacha Brown tanked the A.J. McCarron trade years ago. What was your first reaction to seeing the name Joe Flacco?
A couple of things. One, surprised because it was in division, but certainly when you look, and I looked at just the options, there aren't many teams that would be willing to trade their backup because they're contenders and because they don't want to be in the position the Bengals are in now where they're scrambling. And so I just don't think there were many options out there. Joe Flacco is certainly one where you look at that Browns quarterback room and they clearly want to get those rookies involved, and it makes sense. And they weren't able to strike lightning in a bottle with Flacco like they did a few years ago in 2023 when they made the playoffs. And I think that was pretty clear. And so it made sense for every reason from a trade possibility outside of the division part. And shocker, Mike Brown isn't necessarily a big Browns fan since all of the family history there. And so that's why these interdivision trades are, I wouldn't say common, but they've become more common over the past few years. But I never really wrap my head around or think about Bengals-Browns because there's just so much history. And yet they decided to make a move, and it's a move that, as we were recording, it's official now. The Bengals, they plan on starting Joe Flacco Sunday in Green Bay. So he's going to make his Bengals debut right away, hit the ground running here. He's less than 2 years younger than Zach Taylor. And so that might be part of it too, is they think he's a veteran, someone that completed nearly 65% of his passes last year, is a fast learner, and can hit the ground running with the Bengals. There's a lot of layers to this, Jake. But yeah, that first one, it is surprising to see them make a deal with the Browns. But when you look at Joe Flacco, the player, and his experience, I get why they would be willing to go that route, especially when you look at the cost.
He played against the Bengals in week 1, played pretty well in that game. He was the victim of a ton of drops. The Browns are dropping 10% of the passes thrown their way this year, which is kind of crazy. That was a drop rate for Joe Flacco in Cleveland. He's obviously played for a bunch of teams in recent years and has played partial seasons for a bunch of teams in recent years. Was pretty solid for Indianapolis last year. Was pretty solid for Cleveland 2 years ago. Is another year later now. Was pretty solid against the Bengals in week 1. Can't really move all that well, and is going to be in Cincinnati as he was in Cleveland behind a pretty bad defensive or offensive line. He was being pressured on 40% of his dropbacks in Cleveland, and when he was pressured, that's when things really went haywire for Flacco, really embracing the YOLO life. When he was pressured, he had a 6% big-time throw rate, according to PFF, and a 6.6% turnover-worthy play rate when he was under pressure with the Browns. The yards per attempt numbers, not very good. The Cleveland offense, obviously limited by its offensive line, limited by its weapons. They had some good tight ends, the receivers, leaving a lot to be desired. And like I said, those drops really hurting him.
And gets a 6th rounder and the quarterback for the Browns. Flacco is Cincinnati's quarterback until Joe Burrow can return from his turf toe injury. I'll be completely honest here. When this happened, we had some interesting reactions texting each other. Dan, what do you think of this move? To start with you.
Why? Why, if you're the Bengals, with that offensive line, this offensive line has been bad for years. It still is bad. It's been mitigated by Joe Burrow. Joe Flacco is not going to be the person to overshadow that. And then the other thought was, do they in Cincinnati think that Joe's coming back? Like, is this the move that signifies, no, they have belief that Joe is going to come back maybe mid to late November, and they're just trying to keep themselves in the race so when he comes back, if they can get on that final 4 or 5 game run and get into the playoffs. But this one's odd to me.
Even if that is the goal, this isn't the right quarterback to get there. I understand that there's a dearth of options, but to your point, Joe Flacco was terrible under pressure. In fact, dead last in the NFL in QBR under pressure. QBR of 3. The Bengals' offensive line is even worse than Cleveland's, and they don't have a run game. Cleveland actually has a run game. So I understand that Jake Browning hasn't been good, but I failed to see the upgrade here. I know people are going to say, well, who else? But at least try to capture some upside, potentially. I just don't see the upside in this move.
Yeah, I agree. The perplexing thing for me was that Jake Browning has been here. Like, are you going to get better with Joe Flacco? And then you said it, and we've been talking about it, how bad the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line has been. But I contend always, any offensive line lining up in shotgun 60 times a game is probably going to look bad in 2025's NFL, especially with Joe Flacco with an immobile quarterback. Like, this the guy you go to based on all of the problems that you've seen. I don't know if it's an understanding. I don't know if you think you can get the ball out quicker. I don't know what this move was about. But the first thing I thought about was, okay, let's bring in a statue to stand behind the offensive line that gets the quarterbacks hit and then get better.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why it's not a younger, more athletic option. And now maybe they did in their defense. Maybe they made some calls for a younger player that's maybe a little bit more athletic to try to mitigate it. But this move doesn't feel like it's a upgrade remotely from Jake Browning. I know Jake Browning's turned the football over, but at least he's way more mobile.
Yeah, I would have. I mean, look, man, mobility is better, but I would have. This should have been Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Or even Russell Wilson. I just don't get the Flacco part of it. Like, I don't get it.
Well, okay, from the Brown side of things.
We down on this one.
Jay Duzable and Aditi Kinkawala, who has the league covered. We know you're working sidelines. I'm joining you there too sometimes. So let's start with this, guys, and I'll start with you, Lige. Can you assess the Bengals' chances now of making a run now that they've made this switch? Because obviously now maybe they're not thinking that Jake Browning is the guy.
Yeah, Tim, this is a bit of a head scratcher, and to me, it also smells of desperation by the Cincinnati Bengals. When you look at it, right, Zach Taylor 2 consecutive years not making the playoffs. Tiffany, you've covered this league for a while. If you go 3 years without making the playoffs, usually your seat gets hot as far as job security. So when you look at it, you rarely see interdivisional trades, right? So the Cleveland Browns have had Joe Flacco in the building. They're willing to trade him to a divisional foe. That should tell you everything you need to know. And then I'm going to have our producer, Mark, put up this graphic comparing Jake Browning to Joe Flacco. What's the difference, Tiff?
Well,
what's the difference? Matter of fact, when you look at Joe Flacco, his interception to touchdown ratio is worse than Jake Browning. So to me, yes, I get it. It hasn't gone well, but me and you, Tiff, were talking before we came online. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback right now for the Cincinnati Bengals behind that offensive line. The reason why they don't have their superstar quarterback is because of that offensive line. And now you're going to take Jake Browning away, put in Joe Flacco. I'm not saying Jake Browning is the answer, but you're going to put Joe Flacco in there who is less mobile than Jake Browning. How is that going to pan out? Another issue, this offensive line has not blocked well for Chase Brown running the football. They become a one-dimensional team. So again, you remove Jake Brown and you put Joe Flacco in, who's older. Are you going to sit back and throw 40 times with Joe Flacco? Because history has shown us that's not going to bode well for your team.
All right, well, Leisha, here's what I'll say. You are completely right about that offensive line. I certainly hope that offensive line doesn't get Joe Flacco killed. But Flacco can indeed deliver the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So you've got that going for you. And if you're not constantly behind, then maybe you can get that run game going. And that obviously has been a huge problem for the Bengals. The run game, the play action game, haven't seen it at all. The thing I would say, guys, my mind is blown. Why would you send a quarterback to a division rival right now who could actually put the ball in the hands of your playmakers? You had an opportunity to completely bury the Bengals. Why would you do this? And the Bengals, I'm going to come back to another quarterback that the Browns had during training camp, the one that they actually wanted to start for them, and that was Kenny Pickett. Why wouldn't you make an effort to go trade for a guy who actually does have some athleticism, but could possibly move when your offensive line isn't secure in any way and doing its job? So it's head scratching in a lot of ways. All I can think is that the Bengals believe that Joe Flacco can indeed deliver the ball downfield. The Browns know that Deshaun Watson is getting healthier. Kevin Stefanski just gave an update. When I talked to Deshaun myself during training camp, he said that he was ahead of schedule as compared to when he had hurt the Achilles before. Maybe the Browns have seen enough out of Dylan Gabriel and they are that hopeful that he stays healthy. Maybe this is Jimmy Haslam having said during training camp that the Browns want to at least see both of these rookie quarterbacks at some point. So whether Shedeur Sanders is talking or not, he's going to get an opportunity at some point. But I certainly feel that Joe Flacco is indeed an upgrade. He can indeed still throw the ball to Browning. But it's a head scratcher all around, guys.
But the first thing that comes to mind is first trade ever between the Bengals and the Browns. Historically, Mike Brown refused to trade with the Browns because of the history with his dad and Art Modell. So this is historic in that note. I think this is it's only a 5th round pick, but it's kind of a win-win-win. Okay, the Bengals are desperate for a quarterback. Jake Browning is not getting it done. They've seen Flacco enough to favor him over, interestingly enough, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Okay, so the Bengals win by giving up nothing for a veteran quarterback who could get the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The Browns are turning the page on this season. That's pretty obvious. This moves Shedeur Sanders up a notch for now. I don't think it. I think the team was encouraged what they saw with Dylan Gabriel, and they feel they're in good enough hands. And Flacco was told he's not going to go back in anytime soon. And thirdly, for those fans that want to see Shedeur, he gets one notch closer. I think the only loser in this trade, to be honest with you, is the head coach of the Browns, Kevin Stefanski. It's very unusual to have 2 rookie quarterbacks as your active quarterbacks on a Sunday. I think that's what we're going to see in Pittsburgh. the last time they had a situation like this, they went 0-16 under Hugh Jackson, where they had 3 quarterbacks who never won a game in the NFL. And right now, that's what you got, except for Bailey Zappi, who's got a few wins.